Lieutenant Olivia Grant rubbed her tired eyes and stared at the monitor. For 8 hours, she had watched the same patterns of stars and space debris at the Deep Space Monitoring Station in Nevada. The midnight shift was always the quietest. Then something changed. A small dot on her screen flickered in a pattern that didn't match any known space object. Olivia leaned forward, her coffee forgotten. She tapped her keyboard quickly, zooming in on the anomaly. "Computer, analyze signal pattern," she said, her voice calm despite her racing heart. The computer beeped. "Unknown pattern detected. Signal does not match any known natural or man-made objects." Olivia picked up her phone and called her supervisor, Dr. Alan Fisher. "Sir, I think you need to see this." 30 minutes later, Dr. Fisher stood behind Olivia, his face pale in the blue light of the monitor. "It's not just one signal," he said quietly. "Look here and here." He pointed to several other small dots on the screen. "They're communicating with each other." "Aliens," Olivia whispered, hardly believing the word as she said it. "Let's not jump to conclusions," Dr. Fisher said, but his voice lacked conviction. "I'm calling NASA and the Pentagon." Within hours, the station buzzed with activity. Military personnel and scientists crowded the small monitoring room, all eyes fixed on the signals that grew stronger by the hour. Dr. Fisher worked with his team of cryptographers, trying to decode the strange patterns. After 2 days without sleep, he burst into the main conference room where military officials had gathered. "We've decoded fragments," he announced, his voice shaking. "It's definitely an intelligent species, and they're discussing." He paused, looking around the room. "They're discussing invasion plans." The room fell silent. "Are you certain?" asked General Ben Miller, his face grim. Dr. Fisher nodded. "The translation isn't perfect, but we've identified repeated terms for conquest, resources, and human specimens. This isn't a friendly visit." Within days, world leaders gathered at a secret United Nations meeting. President Linda Carson addressed the somber group. "Ladies and gentlemen, we face an unprecedented situation. An alien fleet approaches Earth with hostile intent. Our scientists estimate we have 6 months before they arrive." She paused as fearful murmurs filled the room. "But we have one advantage. They don't know we've detected them." Dr. Ellen Wright, NASA's chief scientist, stepped forward. "The aliens are technologically advanced, but they clearly don't realize our deep space monitoring capabilities. They're communicating openly, which suggests they believe themselves undetected." "So what do we do?" asked the British Prime Minister. 6 months isn't much time to prepare for an alien invasion." President Carson's expression hardened. "We don't just prepare, we strike first." The room erupted in shocked exclamations. "Impossible," shouted the French president. "We don't even know what we're dealing with." "Which is why our first priority is intelligence gathering," General Miller explained. "NASA engineer Paul Martinez has developed microscopic stealth drones. We can send them to meet the fleet and learn everything about our enemy before they reach us." Back at the monitoring station, Olivia watched as new data streamed in. The alien vessels had entered the outer solar system. Humanity had little time. "Lieutenant Grant," called Dr. Fisher, "we need your help analyzing these new signals. The fate of Earth may depend on what we learn in the next few weeks." Olivia nodded, her face determined. She had joined the military to protect her country. Now she would help protect her entire planet. As she worked through another sleepless night, Olivia wondered how humanity would respond when they learned they weren't alone in the universe. For now, the secret remained contained, but soon the whole world would know. The invasion was coming, but Earth would not wait to be invaded. Paul Martins worked in his lab deep beneath NASA headquarters. The engineer hadn't slept in 3 days, but excitement kept him going. On the table before him sat his greatest invention: microscopic drones smaller than houseflies. "Will they really work?" asked General Miller, who watched from the doorway. Paul nodded without looking up. "They're ready. Each drone has cameras, sensors, and enough fuel to reach the alien fleet and transmit data back to Earth. 2 days later, a secret rocket launched from the Nevada desert. It carried 500 of Paul's tiny drones. The rocket would travel to the edge of the solar system, release the drones, and then self-destruct to avoid detection. At the Deep Space Monitoring Station, Olivia and Dr. Fisher waited anxiously for the first images. A month passed before the signal came through. "We have contact," Olivia said, her voice barely above a whisper. The first images appeared on the screen. Massive ships, unlike anything humans had designed, moved in perfect formation. The drones sent more data each day, revealing details about the aliens themselves. Dr. Fisher assembled a report for the Emergency Council. "We're calling them the Novolix," he explained to the gathered leaders. "They stand about 7 feet tall with 4 arms and scaled skin. They breathe an atmosphere similar to ours, but with higher nitrogen levels." Lieutenant Jack Harrison, a military strategist known for his brilliant battle plans, studied the images of the alien technology. "Their ships have weak points here and here," he said, pointing to areas near what appeared to be engine rooms. "And their weapons systems seem to have a 3-second recharge delay." The council listened intently as Jack outlined potential strategies to exploit these weaknesses. Still, the Novolix technology far surpassed Earth's capabilities. Hope came from an unexpected source. Dr. Elaine Cooper, a biologist, made a critical discovery after studying the biological data transmitted by the drones. "The Novolix have never been exposed to certain Earth bacteria," she explained. "Lab tests suggest they have no immunity to several common terrestrial microorganisms that are harmless to humans. We could develop a biological weapon that would incapacitate them without harming us." President Carson authorized immediate development of such weapons, along with conventional military preparations. As the work continued, world governments maintained strict secrecy about the coming invasion. Life on Earth continued normally while, behind the scenes, every major nation contributed to humanity's defense plan. In Japan, scientists developed advanced shield technology. In Russia, new weapons were tested in secret facilities. In Brazil, vast underground bunkers were constructed to protect civilians if the alien forces reached Earth. Jack Harrison worked closely with Olivia, analyzing the ongoing drone transmissions. "They're so confident," Jack observed. "Look at their formation. No defensive positioning. No scouts ahead of the main fleet. They have no idea we know they're coming." Olivia nodded. "That's our advantage. But we still need more information about their command structure." One of the drones managed to enter a Novolix ship, transmitting interior images. The aliens moved with military precision, following strict hierarchies. The drone captured fragments of their language, adding to the translation database Dr. Fisher had started. "They've conquered other worlds before," Dr. Fisher reported after analyzing the new data. "They see us as primitive and defenseless. A routine conquest." General Miller smiled grimly. "Then they're in for a surprise." As the 4th month of preparation began, the first phase of humanity's plan was ready. Earth would not wait for the Novolix to arrive. Paul Martinez prepared a new generation of drones, these equipped with Dr. Cooper's biological agents. Jack Harrison trained special forces for space operations, using simulations based on the drone footage. Olivia coordinated communications for what would be humanity's first interstellar military operation. The Novolix continued their approach, unaware that the supposedly primitive humans had already set their counterattack in motion. General Samantha Wright stood in the underground war room beneath the Rocky Mountains. Maps and screens covered the walls, showing military bases across Earth and throughout the solar system. Red dots marked the approaching Novolix fleet. 2 months until they reach Earth orbit, Samantha said to the assembled military leaders. "Are we ready?" Colonel Daniel Harris stepped forward. "The first team of space soldiers has completed training. They can operate in zero gravity and use the new weapons." Samantha nodded. "And our hidden bases. We have 6 bases on the moon, 3 on Mars, and 1 on Europa," replied Admiral Joe Peters. "All hidden beneath the surface. The Novolix won't detect them until it's too late." In his laboratory at MIT, Dr. Kevin Barnes worked on the final version of his weapon. Based on Dr. Cooper's discovery about Novolix biology, he had created a device that released a cloud of modified bacteria. The bacteria would quickly disable Novolix soldiers without harming humans. "Will it work in space?" asked Lisa Peterson, the engineer who had joined his team. "Yes," Kevin replied. "I've designed it to work in any environment. Each canister contains billions of bacteria in suspended animation. Once released, they'll spread through their ship's air systems." Lisa nodded and returned to her own work. She had developed a new communication system using quantum technology. The system would let human forces talk to each other without the Novolix detecting their signals. "The enemy won't know what hit them," she said with a smile. At NASA headquarters, Administrator Frank Collins oversaw the conversion of space shuttles and satellites into weapons platforms. Engineers worked day and night, adding laser systems and missile launchers to vehicles originally designed for peaceful exploration. "We're turning plowshares into swords," Frank told his deputy. "I never thought I'd see the day." The deputy shrugged. "Better than having no swords at all when the aliens arrive." In the Nevada desert, Colonel Harris trained his space soldiers. Men and women from armies around the world learned to fight in spacesuits and operate the new weapons. They practiced boarding procedures on mock-ups of Novolix ships, based on the drone images. "Faster," Daniel shouted as a team struggled with a docking exercise. "The real ships won't wait for you to get comfortable." The soldiers pushed harder, improving their time with each attempt. Daniel watched with pride. These weren't just the best soldiers from Earth's armies. They were the first human space fighters in history. At the United Nations, President Carson addressed the Emergency Council again. "The time has come to tell the public," she said. "We can't hide the truth any longer." The council debated fiercely. Some feared panic, others worried about riots or mass suicides. In the end, they agreed to a carefully controlled announcement. That evening, billions of humans watched their television screens as President Carson revealed the existence of the Novolix. She explained the approaching threat, but emphasized humanity's preparations. "We will not wait for them to reach Earth," she declared. "We will meet this threat head-on, united as one human race." The public reaction mixed fear with determination. In cities across the world, some people panicked and fled to rural areas. Others enlisted to help the war effort. Scientists volunteered their skills, and factories worked overtime to build what was needed. 1 week later, the final preparations were complete. General Wright gave the order to deploy the Space Forces. Converted shuttles carried Colonel Harris and his soldiers to their hidden bases on the Moon and Mars. Dr. Barnes shipped his bacterial weapons to the front lines. Lisa Peterson installed her quantum communication devices on all human ships. As the Novolix fleet passed Jupiter's orbit, humanity prepared to launch its first strike. The aliens still hadn't detected Earth's preparations. They still believed they would face a primitive, helpless species. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Captain Melissa Rodriguez sat in the pilot's seat of the stealth ship Arrow. 5 other pilots in identical ships waited beside her in the shadow of Saturn's rings. The massive Novolix fleet moved slowly past the gas giant, unaware of the human vessels hiding nearby. "Remember your training," Melissa said through the quantum communicator. "Plant the packages and get out. Don't try to be heroes." "Copy that, Captain," the other pilots responded. Melissa checked her instruments one last time. The Arrow was Earth's newest spacecraft, covered in light-absorbing material that made it nearly invisible. Inside a small compartment lay Dr. Barnes' biological weapon, ready to be attached to a Novolix ship. "Launch in 3, 2, 1. Melissa pushed the throttle forward. The Arrow glided silently from its hiding place, approaching the nearest alien ship. The other stealth vessels followed, each targeting a different enemy craft. Back on Earth, General Wright and her staff watched through the camera feeds from the stealth ships. No one spoke. No one breathed. Melissa brought the arrow alongside an enormous Novelix vessel. The alien ship dwarfed her craft, like a whale next to a minnow. She activated the magnetic clamps and attached the arrow to the alien hull. "Contact made," she whispered. "Deploying package." A small panel opened in the arrow's side. A robotic arm extended, carrying Dr. Barnes' weapon. The arm placed the device against the alien hull and activated its drilling mechanism. The device cut through the hull and sealed itself in place. "Package 1 deployed," Melissa reported. "Activating timer." Inside the Novelix ship, no alarm sounded. The tiny hole sealed itself with the device inside, now connected to the ship's air circulation system. One by one, the other pilots reported successful deployments. Then, as silently as they had approached, the stealth ships detached and retreated to their hiding places among Saturn's rings. They waited. 3 hours later, the first signs appeared. The targeted Novelix ship slowed and drifted out of formation. Then another ship faltered, and a third. Inside these vessels, chaos reigned. The modified bacteria from Earth spread through the air systems, causing the Novelix to collapse with fever and respiratory distress. None died, but few could stand, much less operate their ships. The main Novelix fleet halted. Communication signals buzzed between the ships as the alien commanders tried to understand what was happening. In her hiding place, Melissa smiled grimly. "Phase 1 complete," she reported to Earth. 3 enemy vessels disabled. The Novelix were not helpless for long. Their ships contained isolation systems that eventually contained the bacterial spread. But the message had been sent. Humans could hurt them. A transmission burst from the lead Novelix vessel, broadcasting on all frequencies in their language. Dr. Fisher, monitoring from Earth, translated it immediately. "Primitive species of Earth," the message said. "You have launched an unprovoked attack on our peaceful expedition. Surrender immediately or face complete destruction." President Carson gathered with the world leaders to craft a response. Some counseled caution, suggesting negotiation. Others demanded an all-out attack while the Novelix were confused. "They call themselves peaceful after we intercepted their invasion plans," the Russian president scoffed. "They are liars as well as conquerors." President Carson nodded. "We will not bow to threats." She turned to General Wright. "Prepare Phase 2. The general transmitted orders to all human forces in space. Colonel Harris and his soldiers boarded their ships. Melissa and her pilots prepared for another mission. President Carson's reply to the Novelix was brief. "Humanity will not bow." The alien fleet reacted with fury. Vessels regrouped, weapons systems powered up. But they remained near Saturn, suddenly cautious about approaching Earth directly. For the first time in their long history of conquest, the Novelix faced a species that struck first. Their carefully planned invasion had been disrupted before it could begin, and humanity was just getting started. Colonel Daniel Harris floated silently in his spacesuit. 5 soldiers drifted beside him, their dark suits blending with the blackness of space. Before them loomed a massive Novelix command ship, everyone clear on the mission. Daniel whispered through the comm system. "Yes, sir," came the replies. "Then let's make history." The 6 humans activated their thrusters and moved toward the alien vessel. Intelligence from the drones had identified an external maintenance hatch that might allow entry. The team had trained for months for this moment. Daniel reached the hull first. He attached a device to the metal surface and stepped back. The device glowed blue, then cut a perfect circle in the alien material. Daniel pushed the cut section inward, creating an opening just large enough for a human in a spacesuit. "Follow me," he said, and slipped inside. The interior was dimly lit with purple light. Gravity pulled them to the floor, artificial gravity similar to Earth's. They sealed the breach behind them and checked their oxygen levels. 90 minutes of air," said Sergeant Amy Hill. "Let's not waste time." They moved through narrow corridors. following the memorized layout from drone footage. Twice they ducked into side chambers when Novolix approached. The aliens were tall, four-armed creatures with scaled skin, just as the intelligence reports had described. Finally, they'd reached the ship's command center. Through a transparent panel, they could see about 20 Novolix working at control stations. "Ready the gas," Daniel ordered. Private Steve Duncan removed a canister from his pack. The gas inside wouldn't harm humans, but would temporarily paralyze the Novolix. "Masks on," Daniel said. Everyone checked their sealed helmets. "Now." Steve opened a small port in the wall and released the gas. Within seconds, the aliens began to collapse. Some reached for weapons but fell before they could use them. "Move in," Daniel ordered. The team burst into the command center, securing the paralyzed aliens with special restraints. Annie moved to the main control panel and plugged in a device created by Lisa Peterson. The device would allow them to access the ship's systems. "I'm in," Annie reported. "Sending data to Earth now." Back on Earth, Lisa Peterson received the incoming transmission. Her fingers flew across her keyboard as she hacked into the alien network. "Got it," she shouted. General Wright and Dr. Fisher looked over her shoulder at the stream of alien data. "I have access to their entire communication system. Can you disable their weapons?" asked the general. "Working on it," Lisa replied. On the Novolix ship, Daniel and his team secured the command center. The paralyzed aliens watched with wide, frightened eyes as the humans moved confidently around their ship. "Check out their star maps," Daniel ordered. Private Duncan examined the alien navigation system. "Colonel, you need to see this," he said after a moment. Daniel joined him at the display. "What am I looking at?" "Their course before they changed direction to head to Earth," Duncan explained. "They were running from something." Daniel studied the star map. Far beyond Earth's solar system, a large area of space was marked with warning symbols in the alien language. Lieutenant Olivia Grant, monitoring from Earth, saw the same data through Amy's video feed. "We need to translate those warnings," she told Dr. Fisher. Fisher worked quickly. "It's not a clear translation, but they're warning about something called the Void. It seems to be consuming stars at the edge of the galaxy." Olivia felt a chill. The Novolix aren't just invaders. They're refugees. Daniel's voice came through the communication system. "Command, we've secured the ship. What are our orders?" General Wright conferred with President Carson, then responded, "Hold your position, Colonel. We have new information to consider." On the Novolix command ship, Daniel looked at the paralyzed alien captain. For the first time, he wondered if there was more to this invasion than simple conquest. "Something tells me this just got more complicated," he said to his team. 3 days after the capture of the Novolix command ship, a request for negotiation came from the alien fleet. The Novolix Supreme Commander, a tall figure with deep purple scales, asked to speak with Earth's leaders. Dr. Alan Fisher stood nervously in the makeshift meeting room aboard the International Space Station. The station had been chosen as neutral ground for this historic meeting. Behind him stood General Wright and President Carson. Across the table waited the Novolix Supreme Commander and 2 alien advisors. "We will translate," Dr. Fisher told the Earth leaders. "I have studied their language enough to communicate basic ideas." The Supreme Commander spoke, making clicking sounds mixed with deep rumbles. Dr. Fisher listened carefully, then translated. "The Supreme Commander says they are impressed by our courage and intelligence. They did not expect resistance from such a young species." President Carson nodded. "Tell them we defend our home, as any species would." After Fisher translated, the commander made a gesture that might have been respect. Then it spoke again at length. "They say they have conquered 12 worlds before approaching Earth," Fisher translated, "but not out of cruelty. They seek resources and allies against what they call the Void." "What exactly is this Void?" General Wright asked. The aliens spoke among themselves before answering. The Supreme Commander's voice grew softer, almost fearful. It is difficult to translate exactly, Fisher said after listening. They describe it as darkness that eats stars, some kind of cosmic force or entity that has destroyed their original homeworld and several neighboring systems. President Carson leaned forward. So they were planning to conquer us to gain resources for their fight against this void. When Fisher translated this question, the Supreme Commander stood taller and made a proud gesture. Yes, Fisher translated. They say their species has fought the void for centuries. They believe it is their destiny to save the galaxy, even if it means conquering lesser species to do so. General Wright laughed harshly. Ask them how it feels to be a lesser species now that we've captured one of their command ships. Fisher hesitated, then translated a more diplomatic version of the question. The Supreme Commander's scales changed color slightly, perhaps their version of embarrassment. They say they have misjudged us, Fisher said after listening to the response. They did not expect humans to detect their approach or to fight back so effectively. President Carson considered this information. Tell them Earth will not be conquered, but we might consider an alliance against this void, if they respect our sovereignty. The aliens seemed surprised by this offer. They spoke rapidly among themselves. They are confused, Fisher explained. In their experience, species either submit to conquest or fight until destroyed. The concept of alliance between equals is foreign to them. Then it's time they learn new concepts, President Carson said firmly. For hours, the negotiations continued. Dr. Fisher's head ached from the strain of translating such complex ideas. But slowly, progress was made. The Novaliks agreed to withdraw their invasion fleet. In exchange, Earth would send scientists to study the void and help develop defenses against it. We will share some technology, the Supreme Commander offered through Fisher's translation. But we keep our weapons technology secret. As will we, General Wright replied. As the meeting ended, the Supreme Commander made a gesture that Fisher had not seen before. What does that mean? President Carson asked. Fisher looked surprised. I believe it's their version of a handshake, a sign of agreement between equals. President Carson stepped forward and repeated the gesture. The Supreme Commander's scales shifted to a deep blue color. They are pleased, Fisher said. I think we have made history today. As they left the meeting room, General Wright whispered to President Carson, Do you trust them? The president shook her head slightly. Not entirely. But I trust our ability to defend ourselves if they break their word. The first alliance between humans and aliens had begun, or not from peaceful contact, but from humanity's refusal to be conquered without a fight. 6 months after the failed invasion, Earth had changed forever. Humans looked up at the night sky with new understanding. They were not alone in the universe, and they had proven themselves worthy of respect among the stars. Captain Melissa Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the Defender, Earth's first true interstellar vessel. Built with combined human and Novaliks technology, it could travel faster than light. The ship gleamed with new metals and systems that humans had never imagined before the alliance. Captain, we're ready for our first test flight, reported her first officer, Steve Duncan, recently promoted after the boarding mission. Melissa nodded. Take us out, slow and steady. The Defender rose smoothly from its dock on the moon. Through the view screen, Melissa watched Earth grow smaller. A Novalik ship flew alongside, escorting them on this historic journey. In a laboratory beneath MIT, Dr. Kevin Barnes worked alongside a Novalik scientist named Crete. Their scales had turned a pale blue, which Dr. Fisher had explained meant excitement or discovery. The combined formula works, Crete said in their still awkward English. The Novaliks were learning human languages just as humans studied theirs. Kevin examined the test results. They had created a new defense against the void, a special field that could repel its energy-draining effects. Earth physics combined with Novaliks biology. Neither of us could have done this alone. Crete made the gesture that humans had learned meant agreement. Together we are stronger. On a planet orbiting Proxima Centauri, the closest star system to Earth, Colonel Daniel Harris supervised the construction of humanity's first off-world colony. Human and Novolix workers built domes and planted earth crops modified to grow in the alien soil. Progress report. Daniel asked Lisa Peterson, who had been appointed chief engineer of the colony. "We're ahead of schedule," Lisa replied. "The Novolix construction methods are incredibly efficient. We'll have the main habitat dome finished next week." Daniel looked out at the red landscape. "Did you ever imagine we'd be building a colony on another planet?" Lisa shook her head. "6 months ago, I was designing communication systems to fight aliens. Now I'm building homes with them." In Washington, D.C., President Carson addressed the United Nations General Assembly, which now included 3 Novolix representatives. "The Alliance has accelerated human development by centuries," she said. "Our medical technology has cured diseases we thought would take decades to defeat. Our space program has leaped forward. And our understanding of the universe has expanded beyond imagination." The Novolix Supreme Commander, now serving as ambassador to Earth, made the gesture of agreement. Their scales shifted to green, indicating formal respect. Lieutenant Olivia Grant, now Director of Interspecies Intelligence, studied new data from deep space probes. The images showed the edge of the void, a darkness that seemed to consume light itself. "It's moving toward our sector of the galaxy," she told General Wright. "The Novolix estimates we have 50 years before it reaches us." General Wright nodded. 50 years to prepare instead of 6 months. And this time, we're not alone. Across Earth, new industries developed. Schools taught Novolix languages alongside human ones. Children played games from both cultures. The initial fear had transformed into curiosity and cooperation. On the bridge of the Defender, Melissa gave the order to activate the new faster-than-light drive. "Take us to the edge of the solar system. Let's see what this ship can do." As the stars blurred around them, Steve smiled. Who would have thought that detecting their invasion early would lead to this? Melissa watched the view screen as the Defender accelerated beyond anything humans had achieved before. "They came to conquer us," she said. "Instead, they'd made us stronger. And when the void arrives, it won't find easy prey. It will find 2 species standing together." Far ahead, beyond the known stars, the void continued its slow advance. But for the first time in its ancient existence, it would soon face something new. A united alliance born from humanity's refusal to wait for invasion. The darkness was coming, but humanity and their new allies would be ready.